All right, so these are our notes for Monday, May 3rd. This is the third set of notes. We will have one more set of notes tomorrow, and then we should be done. What we're talking about today are the facts about evolution. So there are three kind of key facts I want you to be aware of when we're talking about evolution that kind of often become misconceptions or people get a little confused by. So let's start off. Let's go and title this section Facts about Evolution. Here we go. So the first fact we're going to talk about is the idea that who actually does the evolving. And a lot of time people think that individuals, so by individuals I mean like you or me myself, can evolve. And that's just not true. Individuals do not actually evolve. They don't undergo evolution. Evolution has to happen to an entire species. So individuals do not evolve. Evolution, remember it's that change over time, happens to an entire species. And remember the definition of a species, box that key term, is that it's just a group of organisms. Humans are a species. Plants, roses can be a species, right? Dogs, things like that, bacteria. Those are what we mean by a group of them. So individuals cannot evolve. They can't just wake up one day and be like, boop, I want to be blue like a Smurf. It doesn't work that way. It has to happen to the entire species. Everybody in the species has to eventually become a blue tone Smurf in order for it to be called evolution. The second piece then becomes kind of this misconception is that for evolution to happen, they can all have the same, a species can have the same DNA, and that's just not the case. For evolution to happen, a species needs what we call genetic variations. Variety is the spice of life. They have to have genetic variety. They cannot be the same. If they're the same DNA, there's no variety. That becomes problematic for the survival of the species. And I'll give you an example of where it could be problematic. So let's do an example. This is a hypothetical example. Let's talk about eye color. To disclaimer, eye color is called a polygenic trait, meaning it's normally more than just one trait that caused eye color, one gene. But in this case, we're going to treat it like it's a mono genetic. It's just one gene that does it. So the two predominant eye colors we're familiar with are brown eyes and blue. Yes, I know there are more. We're not going to include those in this. We're just going to keep it pretty simple for our understanding. Brown is the dominant, so if we were in sixth grade, we give that a capital B. Blue is the recessive, so we give it a lowercase b. Now, in a population, if everyone in that population, that group of species, happen to be what we call homozygous dominant, they all have brown-eyed alleles, every offspring is going to have the same genetic makeup as their parents. There is no variety, and they will all have brown eyes, which there's nothing wrong with that, except in this hypothetical scenario, let's say there is a disease that passes through and it only affects brown-eyed individuals. And those brown-eyed individuals become blind. And if they become blind and they're hunters and gatherers, it means they probably can't get their food and the species will die off. So when there is no variety and a disease comes into play, it can actually wipe out the entire population. So here's where variety is important. What if, instead of everyone being the same, we had some individuals that were heterozygous? What that means is they still show brown eyes because they have that big B. But in terms of genetics, they can provide the recessive allele as well. And now, most of their offspring still has brown eyes. I'll agree with you there. So those will be affected by this hypothetical, color or blindness disorder. But this individual right here with the blue eyes has no effect. So now they get to survive. They're able to reproduce more, which means if they reproduce more, if we go to another couple of generations, we have a heterozygous individual mating with somebody who's homozygous recessive. in regards to how the population changed, we now have only 50% with the brown-eyed allele versus 75% up there, and 50% now the blue-eyed allele. So that species, because of this genetic variety, this species doesn't die off. Over here, the species would die off. There was no genetic variety, everybody gets wiped out. But because of genetic variety, they were able to evolve. We started seeing more blue-eyed individuals, and the population could sustain. It could continue to grow. So those are 2 facts about evolution. Let's go to a third fact. Move my paper up here. So a third fact about evolution is that there are a couple of factors that can help increase it. We're going to focus on just 2 of them. There are more factors that increase evolution. Things like migration, sexual reproduction, those are all things that help increase evolution. But for our purposes, we're going to focus on natural selection like we've been talking. And then we're going to talk a little bit about mutations. And mutations, let's define that, is literally just random, you can't explain it, changes to DNA. Deoxyribonucleic acid, that stuff that makes you you. That's what mutations are. In fact, in human evolution, blue eyes, like we talked about down here, blue eyes actually are a mutation of the brown-eyed allele. That's actually how they came to be. So those are our facts about evolution. We also talked about a scientist who preceded Darwin, and that was this scientist named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck and his theory of evolution. It came prior to Darwin and actually was widely accepted as pretty much the ultimate theory of evolution until Darwin came to be and everyone was going like, oh, I mean, that Darwin person. Darwin person makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about Lamarck versus Darwin. So Lamarck, the best way I like to kind of summarize Lamarck's theory of evolution was a use it or lose it approach. Meaning if you had the trait and you used it, you kept it and you passed it on. If you didn't use the trait, it went away. It disappeared. It was no longer in existence. So before you're like, well, that makes sense. Let's actually do a little example with giraffes. Okay. So giraffes, as you know, like to eat tall leaves high up in the branches. So let's draw our little trees here. There's their leaves. Don't mind my artwork. We're just trying to get the point across. All right. So early giraffes actually had short necks, not like what we see today. And they had short necks because they ate things low to the ground, right? So they ate all this food. Over time, as this food disappeared, okay, according to Lamarck, the giraffes had to either use or lose it. They had to adapt. So giraffes started to stretch their necks to reach the higher foot. And they stretched their necks and kept stretching and stretching and stretching. And because they used the neck muscles, their necks got longer. So no longer were they short-necked giraffes, but now they had long necks. And they ate this food up here. Well, as this food began to disappear, the giraffes had to do the same thing. They started eyeing new food, so they stretched their necks and stretched their necks. And eventually, their necks were now this long. All because they just used the neck muscles, they developed them, and they got longer necks. According to Lamarck, if this giraffe were to now have a baby, that baby giraffe automatically is born with the long neck. Baby. Okay. Now, some of you are looking at this and going like, well, that kind of makes sense, Ms. Vanderhart. Right? I've only seen long-necked giraffes. Yeah, that makes sense. They use it, they get it. Okay, cool, makes sense. Here's my question. If an individual, according to Lamarck, dyed their hair pink, whee, and then gave birth to a baby, it's a baby wrapped up in a little blanket, okay? According to Lamarck, that baby is also going to be born whee, with pink hair. Like automatically comes out with pink hair. Is that really how it happens? I change my phenotype, I change what I look like, and my offspring automatically get it? According to Lamarck, if you're still kind of confused and you're still being like, well, you could dye the baby's hair pink. Okay, that's not the same thing as actually changing and born with it comes out having pink hair. According to Lamarck, the use it, lose it approach. If you were to never use your legs ever again for whatever reason, according to Lamarck, your legs would disappear and all of your offspring would be born without legs. That's not how it works. So the reason Lamarck's theories don't work, there are two reasons why these are wrong. One is that individuals, like the baby giraffe, cannot evolve. We know this. Lamarck thinks they can't. They can't. And then evolution takes years and years to happen, not days. And according to Lamarck, it can just happen within a lifetime. So that's it for the notes. That's where we stopped. We didn't get to Darwin. We're going to do that tomorrow, and then we'll finish it up. And that's all you need for today. Hope this helps. I'll see you on Tuesday.